the battlefield scavengers. War strips everything down to instinct, and on the battlefields of Europe, survival often meant improvisation. American soldiers, far from supply lines and fighting in unpredictable conditions, quickly learned that the enemy's equipment could make the difference between life and death. When a squad overran a German position, they didn't just secure the ground, they scavenged it. Helmets, boots, coats, ammunition, even rations, everything was inspected, compared, and if better, claimed. The German winter gear was often superior, especially during the brutal cold of 1944. Many GIs swapped their standard-issue jackets for the thick fur-lined parkas of the Wehrmacht. Others traded their heavy M1 rifles for lighter captured weapons like the MP40, ideal for close-quarters combat in ruined cities. Each item carried a strange allure, the enemy's craftsmanship mixed with the thrill of possession. It wasn't just utility, it was psychological. To hold the weapon of the enemy was to feel power over him, to turn his tools against him. But scavenging wasn't without risk. Some German soldiers booby-trapped abandoned weapons or gear, leaving behind deadly surprises, and US command discouraged using enemy weapons, fearing confusion in the chaos of battle. A burst from a German gun might draw friendly fire. Yet in the end, practicality often won over policy. In the mud, the snow, and the wreckage, the scavenger spirit thrived. Soldiers adapted, improvised, and survived. And in doing so, they blurred the line between American uniform and German ingenuity. First encounters with the Wehrmacht's arsenal. The first real taste of German engineering came not in France, but under the blazing sun of North Africa. It was 1942 when American troops of Operation Torch met the Afrika Korps, and with them their fearsome array of weapons. The precision of the MG-34, the sharp optics of German rifles, and the mechanical growl of Panzer tanks all struck a mix of awe and fear. The Germans fought with efficiency, their weapons seemingly an extension of their discipline. When a Panzer III was captured intact near Kasserine, US engineers swarmed it like archaeologists uncovering a lost machine. They studied every bolt, every plate of armor, trying to understand what made it tick, and why their own Sherman tanks often struggled to match it. The Wehrmacht's small arms, too, impressed the GIs. The Kar 98K rifle's smooth action and long-range accuracy stood in contrast to the American M1's brute force and simplicity. Soldiers who picked up a German weapon often described it as built like a watch, elegant, precise, deadly. These early encounters reshaped American attitudes. German weapons weren't just tools, they were symbols of an industrial philosophy that valued precision above all else. And as the war moved from the deserts of Africa to the mountains of Italy, that realization only deepened. Each captured weapon was both a prize and a lesson, a reminder that victory would require not just courage, but adaptation to a formidable enemy's craft. The lure of superior weapons. Stories travel faster than bullets in war, around campfires, in muddy foxholes, and over mess tent coffee. Tales spread through the ranks about the terrifying efficiency of German weapons. The MG-42, they said, could cut a man in half before he hit the ground. The Mauser rifles? So precise you could hit a helmet at 500 yards. Even among American troops who took pride in their own gear, there was a grudging respect and fascination for the craftsmanship of the enemy. The Wehrmacht's weapons were not just deadly, they were beautifully engineered. Each piece of metal fit perfectly. Every mechanism operated with mechanical harmony. To soldiers accustomed to the rugged practicality of American design, these guns felt like something different, almost alive. The sound of the MG-42's distinctive buzz became infamous, a scream of mechanical fury that haunted GIs long after the fighting stopped. It was said that German soldiers would hide one gunner and his assistant deep in the line, knowing that a single MG-42 could hold off dozens of attackers. Soon, units began keeping whatever German weapons they could find. Some were tested out of curiosity, others used in desperate firefights when ammunition ran low. American officers frowned upon it, but on the front line, rules mattered less than results. Soldiers wanted what worked, and the stories proved true. The German weapons did not jam as often, fired smoother, and looked like they were built for eternity. Behind the fascination was also something psychological. Capturing an enemy's weapon was more than scavenging, it was conquest in its purest form. To wield what once belonged to the enemy was to symbolically turn the tide of war, to claim power in the same hands that once threatened you. Every trigger pulled on a German gun by an American soldier carried that unspoken defiance, a statement that their fear had turned into mastery. Trading M1s for Mausers? Among American troops, the M1 Garand was a point of pride, a semi-automatic rifle that gave them an edge in rate of fire. But even so, there were men who quietly set their M1s aside for the enemy's bolt-action Mauser 98K. It wasn't about patriotism or rebellion. It was about precision. The Mauser was heavier, slower, but it was also frighteningly accurate and immaculately balanced. Snipers loved it. Some infantrymen claimed it felt like it knew what you wanted to do. The Mauser's craftsmanship impressed everyone who held it. Its bolt slid like it was greased with glass, and its long barrel made every shot ring true. Soldiers on both sides knew that a skilled marksman with a Mauser could dominate a battlefield from incredible distances. American sharpshooters often scavenged them from fallen German troops, sometimes even modifying them to fit US scopes or ammunition. Others simply wanted a souvenir, a tangible reminder of the skill and science that had gone into the enemy's war machine. But there was more to the trade than technical admiration. It was also a form of quiet rebellion, proof that American soldiers were pragmatic, not bound by regulation or pride. They used whatever worked best, whether it came stamped with US or an eagle and a swastika. The Germans had built their rifles to last for generations. The Americans had built theirs to win a war. In the end, both philosophies met in muddy trenches and shattered cities, where the line between friend and foe blurred, and where a Mauser in the hands of an American told its own story of respect, irony, and survival, the MP-40 craze. To the American infantrymen trudging through ruined villages and snow-covered forests, few things looked as sleek or as forbidden as the German MP-40. Its folding metal stock, compact frame, and smooth automatic fire made it the crown jewel of captured weapons. Soldiers called it the Schmeisser, even though it wasn't actually designed by Hugo Schmeisser. The name didn't matter, the legend did. Possessing one meant more than having an enemy gun. It meant carrying a piece of the enemy's mystique. In the chaos of war, the MP-40 became an object of fascination. When a German patrol was overrun, men would rush to see if one had been dropped or abandoned. Those lucky enough to find one handled it with the reverence of a collector. Compared to the heavy, awkward Thompson or the slow-firing M3 grease gun, the MP-40 felt futuristic, a symbol of German efficiency wrapped in black steel. Its 9mm rounds fired in tight bursts, smooth and controllable, making it ideal for room-to-room fighting. Many American soldiers preferred it when clearing houses or trenches, despite the risk of friendly fire confusion caused by its distinctive sound. Still, the MP-40 wasn't perfect. Its magazine jammed easily if dirt entered the chamber, and spare ammunition was difficult to find behind German lines. But that didn't stop GIs from slinging one over their shoulder, even just for show. Photos from Europe often reveal soldiers posing proudly with MP-40s, trophies of war that said, "I fought the best, and I won." The craze for the MP-40 became so widespread that some officers issued warnings. If it fires like a German, you might die like one, but the allure was too strong. To the young men fighting across Europe, the MP-40 was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of daring, proof that they had faced the enemy up close and lived to tell the tale. The MG-42, the beast of Europe. Its roar could freeze blood. The MG-42, Hitler's Buzzsaw, was the most feared sound of the war. When American troops first heard its mechanical shriek, many thought it was multiple guns firing at once. In reality, it was one weapon spitting bullets at an incredible rate, up to 1,100 rounds per minute. Its sound tore through battlefields like a scream from hell itself, echoing across forests and city ruins. The MG-42 wasn't just fast, it was nearly perfect in design. Easy to mount, quick to reload, and almost impossible to overheat thanks to its quick-change barrel system. It set a new standard for automatic weapons. American soldiers both hated and admired it. Entire units were pinned down by a single MG-42 nest, its bursts slicing through trees and tearing up the ground. Yet whenever an MG-42 position was captured, US soldiers couldn't resist examining it, marveling at the German precision that made it such an efficient killing machine. Some daring GIs even turned captured MG-42s against their former owners. They'd haul them into position, feed them belts of German ammo, and fire back with a weapon that had moments earlier terrorized them. The irony wasn't lost, nor was the respect. Engineers and ordnance officers sent captured examples back to the US for study. After the war, its influence could be seen in the design of the American M60, and even the later German MG3, living proof that the beast of Europe had changed warfare forever. For those who faced it, the MG-42 embodied everything terrifying about the German war machine: speed, efficiency, and the cold perfection of design. To hear it was to know fear, to capture it was to hold that fear in your hands, and to feel, if only for a moment, that you had conquered it. Tanks of the enemy. When American soldiers first came face to face with German armor, it was like staring at a different species of machine. The Panzers, dark, angular, and intimidating, looked more like predators than vehicles. Against them, the American M4 Sherman seemed lighter, simpler, almost humble. The Sherman could outnumber and outmaneuver, but the German tanks could outgun and outlast. Every battle between them was a contest, not just of firepower, but of philosophy, mass production versus mechanical perfection. Whenever a Panzer was captured intact, American engineers treated it like treasure. Teams from the Ordnance Department would swarm the vehicle, measuring, documenting, and dismantling it piece by piece. They examined the thickness of the armor, the smooth precision of the turret gear, the recoil system of its cannon. Even the welds told a story, sharp, flawless seams that reflected a nation obsessed with precision engineering. These field studies were often done under fire, in smoking fields where steel still hissed with heat. But the knowledge they gained would shape the evolution of Allied armor. For tank crews, capturing a Panzer wasn't just a technical victory, it was personal. They'd pose proudly beside it, their hands resting on its thick armor, knowing they had overcome the most feared machines in Europe, the Tiger, the Panther, the formidable Panzer IV. Soldiers spoke of their engines like living beasts, growling low before unleashing destruction. The Germans built tanks like they built clocks, intricately, meticulously, but sometimes too carefully. The Americans learned that while the Panzer could dominate a single battlefield, the Sherman could win a war by sheer endurance and numbers. Each captured tank became a classroom on tracks. Engineers shipped them back to Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland, where they were tested, dissected, and studied. In those workshops, the legacy of the Panzer lived on, its lessons buried deep within the steel DNA of every future American tank. The secret of the optics. Long before the war, Germany had already mastered one craft that would give its soldiers an unseen advantage: glass. The German optical industry was the envy of the world. Companies like Zeiss, Leica, and Swarovski had spent decades perfecting the art of lenses, scopes, and rangefinders. By the time the war erupted, their products weren't just tools, they were works of science and art, precise enough to change the outcome of battles. American soldiers quickly noticed. German snipers seemed almost supernatural in accuracy, able to hit targets that US troops could barely see. When those snipers were finally captured or killed, their rifles revealed the secret: beautifully crafted scopes that turned distant figures into clear silhouettes. The same was true for artillerymen, who used crystal-clear rangefinders to measure distance with eerie precision. Even ordinary German infantry carried binoculars of such quality that American officers began coveting them as battlefield gold. It became common to see US soldiers scavenging binoculars from fallen officers, slipping them into their own packs. They called them the good glass. Some traded cigarettes, rations, or even medals for a pair. Through those lenses, the world looked sharper, brighter, as if the war itself could be seen more clearly. The captured optics didn't just end up as souvenirs. Many were sent back to US research labs where they were taken apart and studied. Engineers sought to understand the German mastery of glass polishing, lens alignment, and coating, techniques that had taken generations to perfect. What began as battlefield trophies soon became lessons in precision manufacturing. To a weary soldier, though, none of that mattered. When he peered through a pair of Zeiss binoculars and saw an enemy position half a mile away, all he knew was that he could see, and maybe, just maybe, survive another day. Capturing the Luftwaffe's wings. For American pilots and ground troops alike, the Luftwaffe's aircraft represented the pinnacle of German engineering: sleek, fast, and deadly. When a Messerschmitt Bf 109 or a Focke-Wulf 190 fell into Allied hands, it wasn't just wreckage, it was a discovery. These planes, crafted with aerodynamic precision and powered by engines that roared like no other, embodied the technological edge Germany had once held over the skies of Europe. After a dogfight or a bombing raid, American recovery teams scoured crash sites, sometimes risking sniper fire to secure what remained of a downed plane. Even a shattered wing or cockpit could hold valuable secrets, new alloys, engine configurations, or weapon systems that had never been seen before. When luck provided a mostly intact aircraft, it was treated like a sacred artifact. The Germans' attention to balance, fuel efficiency, and control systems fascinated Allied engineers who wanted to know what made these planes so superior. Captured aircraft were loaded onto transport ships and sent across the Atlantic to Wright Field in Ohio. There, under tight security, US test pilots took them into the air again, this time under American stars. Flying a former enemy's plane was both exhilarating and terrifying. Test pilots described the Bf 109 as nervous but lethal, while the FW 190 was praised for its agility and responsiveness. These tests revealed design philosophies that would influence American aviation for decades to come, especially in jet development. Every captured plane was a silent teacher. The Allies learned about fuel injection systems that worked at any altitude, superchargers that boosted speed, and aerodynamic principles that would later shape the P-51 Mustang and eventually the first generation of US jet fighters. In the end, the Luftwaffe's wings, once symbols of fear, became blueprints for progress. The sky that Germany once ruled now became the classroom for America's ascent, from the front to the labs. By the final years of the war, the American military had realized that victory wasn't just about capturing ground, it was about capturing knowledge. As the front lines moved deeper into German territory, specialized teams followed closely behind the soldiers. Their mission: seize every scrap of advanced technology the Nazis had built. What they found was astonishing. Inside abandoned bunkers and underground factories, they discovered inventions decades ahead of their time: jet engines, guided missiles, and night vision equipment that could turn darkness into daylight. The infamous V-2 rocket, capable of reaching the edge of space, became the ultimate prize. Thousands of tons of machinery, blueprints, and components were shipped back to the United States under the highest secrecy. Each item carried a story of genius twisted by war, and a glimpse into the future of science. The captured technology didn't sit idle. It was immediately handed over to American research centers and laboratories. Engineers dismantled V-2 rockets piece by piece, unlocking the secrets of propulsion that would later fuel the US space program. Night vision scopes were studied to develop better battlefield surveillance. Even German jet prototypes like the Me-262 inspired an entire generation of aircraft design. Operation Paperclip, launched soon after the war, brought hundreds of German scientists and engineers to America, including Wernher von Braun, whose rocket expertise would one day send astronauts to the moon. The transformation was extraordinary. The same minds that once built weapons of terror were now shaping the technology of peace. From shattered bunkers to secret laboratories, the trail of captured German technology marked the moment when the spoils of war became the seeds of progress. The battlefield had ended, but the race for innovation had only just begun. The trophy hunters. For many American soldiers, the war's end brought a strange new mission: hunting for trophies. It wasn't about strategy or survival anymore, it was about memory, proof, and pride. After months of facing death, they wanted something to hold in their hands, something tangible to say, "I was there, and I made it out alive." The most coveted prizes were enemy weapons and uniforms. German Lugers, with their distinctive toggle action, were the holy grail. A soldier lucky enough to find one would often guard it more carefully than his own rifle. Others searched for Iron Cross medals, SS insignia, or even belt buckles bearing the words "Gott mit uns," God with us. Each item carried a weight beyond its material value. To many GIs, it was a symbol of victory, a souvenir of survival, or a relic from a world that had nearly destroyed them. Some men mailed these trophies home, carefully wrapped and labeled, while others traded or bartered for them. Helmets, knives, pistols, and flags found their way into footlockers and duffel bags, tucked between rations and letters from home. The US military technically forbade looting, but enforcement was half-hearted. Everyone knew that souvenirs were part of war's psychology, a way to process the unthinkable, to turn chaos into keepsake. Not all trophies came easily. Some were taken from fallen enemies, others from prisoners, acts that left moral shadows on even the proudest moments. Yet for many soldiers, the need to bring something home was irresistible. It wasn't greed, it was closure. A captured dagger or helmet became a reminder that the nightmare had been real, and that they had lived through it. Long after the guns fell silent, those trophies sat on American mantles and in dusty attics, silent witnesses to a generation that had stared into the abyss and returned with fragments of its darkness, proof that they had survived history itself. The black market of war. Wherever soldiers gather, a second economy always follows. Invisible, unspoken, but thriving. In Europe during World War II, this hidden marketplace was fed by one irresistible currency: captured German gear. Lugers, Walther pistols, SS daggers, and even Nazi flags became as valuable as gold among the troops. Supply trucks might carry rations and ammo by day, but behind the front lines, another kind of trade flourished. One built on symbols of the fallen Reich. A Luger could fetch a month's pay, or buy a favor that might save your life. Cigarettes, whiskey, and chocolate were the coin of the realm. Soldiers bartered captured items like merchants at a bizarre wartime bazaar, swapping a pistol for boots, a dagger for a watch, or a Nazi armband for a carton of smokes. The line between souvenir and black market deal blurred until it vanished completely. Some officers turned a blind eye, others joined in. Even supply clerks and medics became middlemen, quietly trading items that passed through their hands. By 1945, Entire underground networks stretched from the front lines all the way to ports where ships waited to carry soldiers and their contraband back home. Crates of war trophies disappeared, reappearing in pawn shops and gun cabinets across America. But the black market was more than greed. For many, it was a way to reclaim control in a world gone mad, to turn destruction into something tangible, something they could own. Every trade carried a silent story. A firefight survived, a comrade lost, an enemy defeated. When the war ended, governments cracked down on smuggling, but the flow of captured German relics never truly stopped. Even decades later, collectors still seek out those same loggers and daggers, unaware of the web of desperation, danger, and human hunger that once brought them into being. Operation Lusty. As the Third Reich collapsed, the race for its secrets began. The Allies weren't just fighting for land anymore, they were fighting for knowledge. In 1945, as American troops advanced deep into Germany, a covert mission was activated under a strange codename, Operation Lusty, short for Luftwaffe Secret Technology. Its purpose was clear: to seize every scrap of German aviation and weapons research before the Soviets could get their hands on it. Teams of American intelligence officers, engineers, and pilots swept across airfields, laboratories, and bombed out factories. They found hangars filled with strange prototypes, rocket-powered interceptors, jet aircraft, and radar systems years ahead of anything the Allies had built. The crown jewel was the Messerschmitt Me 2162, the world's first operational jet fighter. Sleek, fast, and deadly, it represented the future of aerial warfare, a future the US was determined to claim. Captured planes were flown or shipped to America under heavy secrecy. The same Luftwaffe engineers who had once designed weapons for Hitler were now carefully questioned by Allied officers, sometimes recruited outright. American pilots learned to fly the Me 2162 and Arret R-2134 jet bombers, studying their strengths and weaknesses. Every switch, every circuit, every bolt was documented, compared, and analyzed. Nothing was too small to matter. Even the paint composition on German aircraft was tested for radar reflectivity. But Operation Lusty was also a race against time. The Soviets were advancing fast, taking their own share of scientists and machinery from the East. It became a silent competition between former allies who could harvest the most from Germany's fallen empire. The Americans had one advantage: speed and precision. Within months, they had shipped hundreds of tons of equipment and research across the Atlantic, locking away the technological heart of the Luftwaffe before it could vanish into Soviet hands. When the war finally ended, Operation Lusty stood as one of the most successful intelligence missions in US history, a mission that quietly reshaped the balance of power for decades to come. From capture to copy. The war was over, but its influence had only begun. Across American laboratories and military factories, the fruits of captured German technology began to bloom. Engineers who had studied Panzer tanks, MG-42 machine guns, and Me-262 jet engines now used that knowledge to create the next generation of American might. The enemy's innovation had become the foundation of post-war progress. The fingerprints of German engineering appeared everywhere. The MG-42's blistering rate of fire inspired the American M60, which would go on to serve in Vietnam and beyond. The aerodynamic lessons learned from Luftwaffe jets shaped the design of American fighters like the F-86 Sabre, a direct descendant in spirit of the Me-262. Even the V-2 rocket, once a weapon of terror, became the blueprint for the US missile and space programs. Captured scientists played a crucial role too. Under Operation Paperclip, hundreds of German experts were secretly relocated to the United States. Among them was Wernher von Braun, who had designed the V-2. In America, he would go on to design the Saturn V rocket that sent Apollo astronauts to the moon. The irony was immense. The same knowledge that had once fueled destruction now carried humanity to the stars. Beyond weapons, even the smallest innovations, optics, metallurgy, engine design, were absorbed into US industry. Factories in Detroit, Boston, and Los Angeles quietly integrated techniques borrowed from German production lines. The influence spread far beyond the battlefield, shaping the entire industrial age that followed. By the 1950s, American soldiers and scientists were using tools, weapons, and technologies born from the ashes of Germany's defeat. What had begun as captured spoils of war had evolved into the technological DNA of a new superpower. The lessons of precision, efficiency, and innovation that once defined the Wehrmacht now powered the very nation that had overcome it, turning conquest into creation. What remained after the smoke? When the guns finally fell silent, and the smoke of war drifted into memory, the battlefields of Europe were littered not just with wreckage, but with revelation. Scattered across forests, villages, and airfields lay the remnants of a war machine that had once terrified the world. American soldiers, engineers, and historians sifted through it all, realizing that what they held in their hands was more than the debris of defeat. It was the blueprint of the future. The fascination with German equipment, the rifles, the tanks, the optics, the rockets, had never truly been about trophies. Beneath the surface, it was about understanding how an enemy so destructive could also be so advanced. The Americans didn't just copy, they studied, they learned, and they built upon what they found. From those lessons came new weapons, new industries, and even new philosophies of design, proof that knowledge, even when born from darkness, could lead to light. But the legacy of captured German technology was complicated. For every rocket that sent a man to space, there was a haunting reminder of the rocket's origins, built in underground camps by enslaved laborers. For every marvel of engineering adopted into peacetime, there remained the echo of what it had once served: conquest, domination, annihilation. The line between progress and exploitation blurred, and the world had to decide what it meant to inherit genius born in tragedy. As decades passed, the artifacts of that era, the Lugers, the Panzer blueprints, the Messerschmitt wings, found their way into museums and private collections. Some saw them as symbols of horror, others as monuments to human ingenuity. Yet all carried the same silent message that even the tools of destruction can become instruments of creation if humanity learns from its past. In the end, what remained after the smoke was not just the power of technology, but the power of transformation, a testament to mankind's ability to take the engines of war and turn them into the engines of peace. The enemy's brilliance had become the world's inheritance, and in that inheritance lay both the burden and the hope of the modern age.